the most painted meal in human history. Leonardo da Vinci spent 3 years on it. Tintoretto painted it, Rubens painted it, Salvador Dali painted it. More than 1,000 artists across 5 centuries have tried to capture what happened in that room on that night. And almost every single one of them got it wrong. The long rectangular table is wrong. The high-backed chairs are wrong. The individual bread rolls are wrong. The wine glasses are wrong. The tablecloth is wrong. Leonardo's famous painting was painted in a 15th century Italian dining room, not a 1st century Jerusalem upper room. The real Last Supper looked nothing like what you have in your head. And when you understand what it actually looked like, the furniture, the food, the seating arrangement, the theology of that night becomes something you can almost touch. This is what was actually on the table, and where they actually sat. Every detail grounded in 1st century Jewish archaeology, Roman dining custom, and the specific gospel accounts read in their original cultural context. Let's go in. The first thing to establish is the room itself. Luke 22:12 calls it an anagaion, a Greek word meaning upper room, specifically a large furnished upper room. The word furnished is important. The Greek term estromenon means spread or prepared, the same word used for spreading a bed or laying out a couch. Not chairs, couches. The dining custom that Jesus and his disciples followed that night was not the standing Passover of the Exodus, feet sandaled, staff in hand, ready to leave at a moment's notice. That was the original Passover of Egypt. By the 1st century, the rabbis had transformed the Passover Seder into something deliberately different. The word is hezeba, reclining, the posture of free men, the posture of Roman citizens at a formal banquet, deliberately adopted by the rabbis as a statement that at Passover, every Israelite was free. This changes the entire picture. The dining custom for a formal 1st century Jewish meal would have followed the Roman Triclinium model. 3 low couches arranged in a U-shape around a central low table. Diners reclined on their left sides on the cushioned couches, propped on their left elbow, their right hand free to reach the food. The host position was at the left end of the middle couch, the position of honor, visible to all guests, easily served by attendants. The position to the right of the host, the next position on the same middle couch, was the position of the honored guest, the person whose back was literally against the host's chest. This is where John reclined. John 13:23. One of his disciples, whom Jesus loved, was reclining at table at Jesus' side. The Greek is ento kolpo, literally in the bosom or breast of Jesus. And the position to the left of the host was traditionally the position of the second most important guest, or the one the host wished to honor with a morsel dipped in the dish. John 13:26. Jesus answered, "It is he to whom I will give this morsel of bread when I have dipped it." So when he had dipped the morsel, he gave it to Judas. Now we need to understand what Passover actually was in the 1st century. The modern Passover Seder, as practiced today, is a beautiful and elaborate ritual developed over centuries of post-temple Judaism. The 1st century Seder was different. The Mishnah Pesachim chapter 10 describes the Seder order in detail. 4 cups of wine, specific blessings, the retelling of the Exodus, bitter herbs, unleavened bread, the Hallel Psalms. Matthew 26:30. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. The hymn they sang was the second half of the Hallel, specifically Psalms 115 through 118. The last words Jesus and his disciples sang together before Gethsemane. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. He sang those words, walking out of the upper room, knowing what was coming. The Lamb. Exodus 12:8. They shall eat the flesh that night, roasted on the fire. With unleavened bread and bitter herbs they shall eat it. Before the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, the Passover sacrifice was a central requirement. A lamb had been brought to the temple courts that afternoon and slaughtered in the temple precincts. Jesus ate lamb at the Last Supper. The bitter herbs. The Hebrew is maror, a category including horseradish, romaine lettuce, endive, and other bitter plants. They were dipped in charoset, a paste of fruit, nuts, and wine that the Mishnah says represents the mortar the Israelites used in Egypt. The unleavened bread, the matzah, 3 pieces traditionally, the middle piece broken, the afikomen, hidden and found, and eaten last. Jesus took the bread and broke it during the Seder at the moment of the afikomen. He did not invent a new ritual. He transformed one that was already there. The 4 cups of wine. Each cup had a name, corresponding to one of the 4 expressions of redemption in Exodus 6:6-7. I will bring you out. I will deliver you.
This cup is
I will
covenant
redeem
of
you.
my blood,
I
which
will
is
take
poured
you.
out.
The 3rd cup, the cup of redemption, drunk after the meal, was the cup Jesus lifted and said, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many." The Charoset, the salt water, representing the tears of Egypt and the Red Sea. The karpas, a green vegetable, usually parsley or celery, dipped in the salt water at the beginning of the Seder. The Mishnah specifies the ratio. The mixing of wine and water at the table was not a modern invention. It was standard 1st century practice. Now the specific acts that have redefined history. Luke 22:19. And he took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them. But the thanks he gave was not a spontaneous prayer. It was the specific blessing over the matzah that every Jewish head of household spoke at Passover. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. He had spoken those words every Passover of his life, at every meal of his life. This night he spoke them, and then said something new. Luke 22:20. And likewise the cup after they had eaten, saying, "This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." The cup after they had eaten, after the meal. The 3rd cup, the cup of redemption. Jesus took the specific cup that the Seder already assigned to redemption and said, "This is the new covenant in my blood." He was not replacing the Passover. He was fulfilling it. Now we need to talk about what else happened at the table that night. Because the Gospels record several conversations and acts that become completely transformed when you understand the physical layout. Peter's question. John 13:24. Simon Peter motioned to him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. Peter could not ask Jesus directly because the room's layout placed them far apart. He gestured to John across the room to ask the question on his behalf. Jesus dipped the morsel and gave it to Judas. In the context of the Passover table, this was not a secret identification. It was a public gesture of love and honor toward the one Jesus knew was about to betray him. He gave the traitor the honored morsel, in full view of the table. The washing of feet. John 13 places this at the beginning of the supper. The household servants who normally washed guests' feet at the door were apparently not present. Jesus rose from the table, from his reclining position, wrapped a towel around his waist, and washed each disciple's feet. The shock was not just the act. It was the position he was rising from. The host, the teacher, the one in the position of greatest honor at the table, getting up to do the task of the lowest household slave. Now let us sit at the table and count what we know. 13 people, Jesus and 12 disciples. The Triclinium had 3 couches. Jesus, left end of the middle couch, host position. John, to Jesus' right, reclining in his bosom. Judas, to Jesus' left, position of the second honored guest. The Gospels do not specify where Thomas, Philip, James, Andrew, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot sat. but the 13 of them filled the 3 couches.
All of them filling the 3 couches of the upper room in the specific postures of free men celebrating freedom, reclining on their left sides, right hands free, wine cups within reach.
Which means Jesus was not the first person to speak those words at that table that night. The entire Seder had already been building toward them. The Haggadah includes a passage where the head of the household lifts the matzah and says, "This is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are in need come and celebrate Passover with us."
Jesus reclined at the Passover table as both the one telling the story and as the story itself.
The lamb that died so that Israel could live. Of blood on a doorpost that caused death to pass over. Of a people brought out of slavery into freedom by the outstretched arm of God. The blood that would mark a new doorpost. The one who would bring a people out of a deeper slavery into a deeper freedom.
He knew. He had always known. And he sat at the table, the position of the host, the position of honor, the position of the one who breaks the bread and fills the cup.
And he finished what the Passover had been saying for 1,400 years.
Now sit at that table, not as a theologian, not as an art historian trying to correct Leonardo. As a person, you are reclining on a cushioned couch in a Jerusalem upper room. The city outside is crowded. Hundreds of thousands of pilgrims have come for Passover. The smell of roasting lamb is everywhere. You have been preparing this meal since that afternoon. The oil lamps are lit. Their smoke curls toward the low ceiling. Jesus reclines at the center of the middle couch, the host's position. His disciples fill the couches around him. The cup of wine is mixed and poured, and he begins the Seder. The same words every Jewish family in Jerusalem is speaking tonight. The same story, the same bread lifted, the same questions asked. What makes this night different from all other nights?
What makes this night different?
And then, in the middle of the story Israel has been telling for 14 centuries, he does something no one at the table expected. He picks up the afikomen, the broken middle matzah, and he says, "This is my body, broken for you." He picks up the cup of redemption, the third cup, the cup of the covenant, and he says, "This is the new covenant in my blood." He was not replacing the Passover. He was fulfilling it. The Passover had always been pointing here. Now sit at that table, not as a theologian, not as an art historian trying to correct Leonardo. As a person. You are reclining on a cushioned couch in a Jerusalem upper room. The smell of roasting lamb is everywhere. Jesus reclines at the center of the middle couch, the host's position. His disciples fill the couches around him. The cup of wine is mixed and poured, and he begins the Seder. The same words every Jewish family in Jerusalem is speaking tonight. And then, in the middle of the story Israel has been telling for 14 centuries, he picks up the afikomen, the broken middle matzah, and he says something. The next time someone shows you Leonardo's Last Supper, the long table, the high chairs, the Eurocentric figures in a Renaissance dining room, remember what was actually there. A roasted lamb at the center of the table, matzah in 3 pieces, 4 pads of wine mixed with water, bitter herbs, charoset, salt water, the smell of a city of pilgrims outside the window. And in the position of the host, the left end of the middle couch, a man who knew exactly what was coming. Reclining in the posture of a free man, celebrating the freedom of his people, about to become the price of a deeper freedom for all people. The words he spoke that night were not new. They had been waiting 1,400 years to be spoken. And when he spoke them, the Passover was finally, fully, and forever fulfilled. If this changed how you picture the Last Supper, if you will never see that painting the same way again, hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who has seen Leonardo's painting 100 times and never questioned it. And tell me in the comments, what hit you hardest? The reclining posture? The position of Judas at the table? The third cup of redemption? The afikomen as the broken body? Tell me, I read every one.